Namaste and welcome. It's Rishi here from meditatewithrishi.com, and today we're going to be speaking about a really important topic, depression. So this video, or rather the aim of this video, is to tell you how meditation can help overcome depression, but it is something I believe that needs a deeper dive. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be taking you through the entire process, looking at it like a subject, right? So we'll cover what is depression, why does it happen, what are its symptoms, how do you know if you or somebody else, could potentially be depressed, and then coming to the important aspect, which is how is it currently treated, what are the good things and maybe the shortfalls of the current treatment, and then I'm going to tell you specifically how meditation can help overcome depression. Okay, so this is, I'm not presenting meditation as a replacement for the standard treatments out there, of course not, but it is something that can definitely help, quicken the recovery, or more importantly, instill the belief in somebody going through it that they can overcome it. Because that's one of the biggest problems, not having the belief that you can come out of depression, that you can come off taking the medication, that you can essentially, overcome anything, having that positive, optimistic mind frame, right? That is something meditation can do. So some of you may be wondering, why am I doing this video, right? What right do I have to speak about depression? So this is, it's something really close to my heart. So it's a couple of things, right? And it's why I'm doing this video right now. So depression is something that I went through without knowing it, right? So and you'll see what I mean when I tell you the symptoms later on. So I lost my parents at 20 years old, both my parents, and that was a big shock to my system, right? So all of a sudden, from living this party life in university, lost both my parents, all of a sudden there's no financial support, there's no emotional support. It was a big shock, and I'd failed university. So I had, zero job prospects. And I managed to get on my feet. Some of you may know my story, but eventually it led to me, I started partying a lot. And that, what started as innocent partying, led to a full-blown addiction to drugs and alcohol, and that went on for about 5 or 6 years. And my saving grace, as many of you will know, was meditation, right? I didn't go the traditional route. I didn't even know that I had an issue until I knew I had an issue with using drugs and alcohol, and that's when meditation was my saving grace. But beyond that, the girl who is now my fiance, she went through, major depression, and she went more the traditional route, right? So she went through severe trauma. She lost her dad in a very traumatic way. So her dad was he died saving her in a river. Imagine having to live with that, right? So she went the traditional route. She sought help, went through psychotherapy, went through taking the medications, and ultimately was able to overcome it. But from being with her, I've been able to learn a lot about what that process is like, and some of the disadvantages of it, especially with the medication, the side effects, the difficulty to come out or to quit that medication, right? It's no easier than quitting a hard drug like cocaine or nicotine. So this is what I want to discuss essentially. So let's begin. Let us look at starting with what is depression, okay? Because this is, you'll see, unlike my traditional videos, I've done a bit of research. You'll see me reading my notes and speaking, because it's quite a delicate topic, and I needed to inform myself on it. So depression, according to a lot of different medical websites, is a mood disorder that involves a persistent feeling of sadness and a loss of interest. So a mood disorder that involves a persistent feeling of sadness and a loss of interest in things that you usually liked. Okay, now of course there's many types of depression, and they have overlapping symptoms, but I will tell you what the two major types are, right? So the first one is major depression, and major depression essentially is when you experience the symptoms of depression most of the day. Okay, so most of the day, you can clearly tell that you're not in a good mood, you are feeling depression, or you're feeling the symptoms of depression. Okay, and the second one is persistent depression. So persistent depression, although the symptoms may not be as severe, they tend to last for 2 years or more, right? So if you're feeling symptoms for 2 years or more, then it's likely that you have persistent depression. Okay, so what are some of the symptoms of depression? And this is where it gets kind of educational, because I didn't know this. I thought depression just means being sad and not liking your life, but there's actually a lot more to it in terms of symptoms, right? So I'm gonna take you through a variety of symptoms, and this will give you an idea of if you've ever felt that way, or somebody that feels or behaves in this way. Okay, so the first one is the most obvious, right? So your mood is when you're feeling empty, you're feeling sad, you're feeling worthless, you're feeling hopeless. Okay, a very pessimistic view on life, no interest in living life. You've lost that zest for life that you used to have. Okay, but beyond this, beyond feelings of sadness and hopelessness, it could also be anger, right? Feeling anger, feeling anxiety, feeling aggressiveness, becoming irritable, right? So of course it's okay to feel these, it's normal to feel these emotions on a day-to-day basis for a little time. But if it is becoming repetitive and people around you, your family, your friends are noticing this change in your behavior or someone's behavior, there may be a chance that the mental health needs to be looked at. Okay, the second one is rumination. So rumination is where the brain gets caught up in negative thoughts continuously. So you get a negative thought, and then you ride that thought, becoming it starts becoming, the problem becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, and ultimately you try to problem solve in your mind, trying to make the problem go away, thinking it will, and it never does, right? It never really goes away. So that is another sign that you could be depressed, right? Not having that control to bring your mind back and be like, I don't want to think about that stuff. I'm going to think about positive things, right? So rumination is number 2. Then behavior, right? Losing interest in your favorite activities. If you're somebody that used to go out a lot, or paint, basically have many hobbies, or love the work that you do, and all of a sudden you've lost that interest, that could be a sign. And then this was my story massively, right? Drinking, drugs, abusing substances, self-destructive behavior, right? Self-destructive behavior in any kind, right? Whether it's spending all your money when you shouldn't, drinking, drugs, all these things, right? Binging on Netflix and not living life ultimately. Avoiding family, avoiding friends are very common. And then thoughts of self-harm, suicidal thoughts, right? These are all symptoms. Okay, these are all symptoms. And I mean, if it's reached a level of self-harm and suicidal thoughts, then it's a clear indication that something needs to be checked ultimately. Okay. Then the other symptoms are cognitive abilities. So your ability or your inability to concentrate, your inability to get things done. You find yourself procrastinating a lot. You find yourself not able to focus, right? It also goes into your sleep. So your sleep patterns change. Insomnia, a very obvious one. And then 2 extremes. Excess sleeping too much, 12 hours a night, or very little sleeping, not being able to sleep fully. This is another symptom, okay? So what have we covered so far? We've covered your mood, right? From sadness to anger to anxiety to rumination, writing negative chains of thought, to changes in behavior, withdrawing socially, being aggressive, self-destructive behavior, right? Your cognitive abilities, the inability to concentrate, the inability to get things done, procrastinate, right? Your sleep patterns, and of course physical symptoms like constant pains, constant fatigue, feeling tired all the time, digestive problems, headaches coming again and again and again, right? Anything that your body is telling you. We're very good at listening to the physical symptoms, but we're not good at listening to the mental symptoms, and that's what we need to do, not just for ourselves, but for others as well. There is this quote that I read that people don't fake depression, people fake being okay. So in our society, when somebody is feeling down and there is clearly something wrong with them mentally, we need to practice compassion toward them. We need to hear them out, because they're not just saying it, or they're not just being weak, or not able to control themselves. There is something deeper that is wrong, and the person should be encouraged to get professional help ultimately. Okay? All right, so we now have a good idea of what are the symptoms of depression. Now, let's go and take a look at what are the causes of depression, okay? So, look, the most obvious cause is severe trauma, any kind of trauma that you faced, the death of a loved one, okay? A huge failure. Let's say you spent 10 years building a business and somebody came and, conned you out of it, or something happened, right? Any kind of severe trauma, very high chance of depression. When my parents passed away, I had, instead of having the time to process my emotions, I had bigger needs that needed my attention, like finding a job and surviving financially. And that meant that I never had the time to process those emotions, but they were stored in my body as energy. And ultimately, they, manifested as an addiction to drugs and alcohol. Energy has to flow, and it will come out in one way or another. So it's better if we can process it, process trauma, through positive means like meditation, right? Instead of going down the negative route. So severe trauma, number one. The second one is drug and alcohol use, according to helpline.com. So using drugs and alcohol can lead to depression, and if you have depression, you can begin to use drugs and alcohol. So it kind of goes both ways. The third one is medical conditions. Like if you have been diagnosed with a medical condition, a chronic one, right? And that is a shock to you. All of a sudden, life is not the same anymore. You feel like you cannot do everything you wanted. On top of that, you may feel like you have become a burden to your family and your friends. And that, depression comes very easily then, right? So it's really important to check our mental health and to take responsibility ourselves. Obviously, if it's about helping others, being compassionate to others, but ultimately, what we can do for ourselves, nobody can do, right? And this is why I want to present, the advantages of meditation, because this is something you can do yourself, and the results are profound. For me, it helped me overcome drugs, alcohol, confidence issues, and it freed me, it liberated me, and now I'm living the life that I never thought or imagined, that I could. I did dream of it, but I never believed I could. Okay, so it's really, really powerful. Now, one thing I want to point out is I've scoured through, numerous medical websites, and the one thing that they have in common is that they all say that in a lot of cases, the medical community does not fully understand the causes of depression. So in many cases, they cannot tell why somebody is depressed. And if you contrast this with the science of yoga says that very clearly, in contrast, it's a very clear statement that the cause of human suffering is the ignorance of our true nature. Now, you may not know what that means, and I will go into that and show you how not knowing our true nature, which is pure love, makes us suffer. It doesn't have to be all the way, into depression, but it just makes us suffer generally in life. And the closer we get to our true nature, knowing what our true nature is, the happier we are, because that is a source of happiness. And I will explain that to you in a bit more detail, but I just want to show you that, we have advanced a lot in modern science, in medical science, and I'm not saying anything bad about it, but what I am saying is that, there are other ways, like the science of yoga, like the text, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which is the ultimate. It is like the Bible of psychology, of understanding how the human body and mind work together and how to navigate the workings of the mind. People think yoga is the headstands and the back bends and all the the flexible poses you see, but it's not. That is a small fraction of what yoga is. Yoga is it means union with the universal self. And how is yoga done? The point of yoga is, in Sanskrit, it is chitta vritti nirodha, which means it is to remove the modifications of the chitta, the consciousness, to remove the modifications of the mind, to kind of remove all the weeds that are stored in our subconscious, the impressions that give rise to this negative thinking. And that is what yoga does. And meditation is the path to do that. Okay, so you have somewhat of an idea what causes depression, but remember, medical science does still not know, in all cases, why somebody is depressed. Okay, so now let us go to what happens if depression is left untreated. Because you can be depressed and not know it, right? But it will show up. It will show up in your body or the way that you're living your life. And this is how I have somewhat figured that it's likely I went through depression. Okay, so here are the symptoms that come if depression is untreated. So you can't ignore it. There is no way you can ignore it. Okay, it has to be dealt with, and how you do that again depends on the routes you take. So number one, panic attacks. Okay, if you are getting panic attacks because of extreme anxiety, that is a clear sign of depression. Social isolation, right? If you find yourself completely avoiding friends, family, and just staying in your room, there is a chance that you are depressed. Okay, substance abuse. This was the kind of telling sign, for me, which I didn't know at the time. I didn't know that I'm addicted to drugs and alcohol, which could mean that I'm depressed. It never occurred to me, right? But substance abuse is simply a coping mechanism and not a very good one. So that is a clear sign. Self-harm, thoughts of suicide, okay? So if depression is left untreated, it is likely that one of these will manifest. Panic attacks, social isolation, substance abuse, self-harm, thoughts of suicide. Okay, and a clear indication is just a general lack of interest, a loss of interest in the life that you were living. If you change all of a sudden and become very, very withdrawn from society, that is a clear sign that mental health is an issue and it must be looked at. It must be looked at, okay? All right, so far we've covered what is depression, what are its symptoms, okay, and what happens if it is untreated. Now, let us get into the meaty stuff, which is what we actually want to discuss, okay, which is the treatment, so how it's treated currently, the advantages of the current treatment, and some shortfalls ways in which the treatment does not work, and ultimately what we can do about that through meditation and yogic practices. Okay, so what I'm giving you is a kind of standard across the board treatment that is widely known and used and prescribed for depression. Okay, number one is psychotherapy, which means speaking to a therapist. Okay, number two is medications, which are antidepressants, anti-anxiety, antipsychotics. Okay, so antidepressants and speaking to a therapist is the traditional route that one would be taken through if you go and seek medical advice. Okay, so let's look at the advantages and disadvantages of these. With psychotherapy, speaking with a therapist, look, I don't think there is any disadvantage to this. This is a good thing. This is a chance for you to open up, speak your mind. And when you speak things out, you begin to actually get clarity on what you're feeling, because you've never sat down to think, how am I feeling? So when somebody's asking you questions and you can speak freely, it is a great thing. It's a fantastic thing, right? And this ultimately, it gives you a lot of clarity. And what the therapist can do is ultimately show you ways to not carry on in that negative cycle, and ways to think more positively. Okay, but having said that, a disadvantage is that, look at how overworked the public health services are at the moment. Okay, what if you do not have access to a therapist? What if you cannot afford a therapist? What if you live in a country where you cannot even go to a public health service and you can't afford this treatment? What do you do then? And living in the Western world, this may not be a question that's important to you, but I'm doing this video for anyone in the world who has depression and wants to overcome it. This is a problem, right? Because we're ultimately depending on something outside of us, and that is, come on, it's a problem. Because if it's not there, if it's not available, then what? Okay. The second one is the medications, the antidepressants, anti-anxieties, etc. Now, what do I say about this? I don't need to tell you, okay? Even if you have not gone through depression, I'm sure you know that antidepressants have a lot of side effects. Okay? So look, let me not berate them completely. They are good because they provide immediate relief. Maybe not immediate. I believe there's a bit of a lag in the relief that you get, but you still get it. You still get it, and the short-term relief is there. Okay, so you are able. What they do is ultimately they increase the level of neurotransmitters in your brain. Okay, and what this does is it reduces the feelings that you're feeling. In some cases, it's because they are numbing you. In some cases, it's because it's helping your brain produce the chemicals that it cannot produce on its own. Okay, but ultimately, this is somewhat of a band-aid solution, because you take them, you get some short-term relief, but then what? Right? Coming off them, I'm sure you know this, or because you know somebody that has gone through this, how difficult it is to come off them. Okay, but even when you are on these antidepressants, they have ridiculous side effects, right? So according to Harvard Medical School, the side effects, right? This is a across-the-board side effects of antidepressants: insomnia, skin rashes, headaches, joint and muscle pain, stomach upset, really common, nausea, really common, diarrhea. Okay, with already suffering mentally, do you want these side effects? Obviously not. That's a silly question. Of course you don't, right? So am I saying don't take this medication? No, that's not what I'm saying. Okay, but what I am saying is that I think what people need to realize is when they get on this medication, the aim should not be to be on this medication. The aim should be to come off it as soon as possible. As soon as possible. This should be the aim. that goal should be in mind, right? So the reason I'm saying this is with my fiance, you know, when we were initially friends, and I used to ask this question that, you know, you're on this medication right now. Do you believe that you will ever be able to come off it? And the answer was, I don't know, right? The answer was, I don't know. And this is somebody that has gone through the traditional route of treatment, has a therapist, and they have everything that one who is undergoing depression can be given, right? As a service, can be given. And even then, the number one thing that they need, the belief that they can overcome it, is not there. The belief that they can overcome it is not there. And my friends, that is a real problem, because belief is above everything. This is why placebos work, right? Belief is above everything. If the belief is not there, if there is no belief that you can come off this, come on, this is not good, right? And this is why practices like meditation are really important, because they instill that belief in you. They take you closer to that part within yourself that is the source of all strength, and, you know, give you the belief that you can overcome it. You know, when I was addicted to drugs and alcohol, it took me, I'm not saying meditation is instant, it's not instant, okay, but it took me a long time to get off them. But there was a point after 2 years of trying when I began to see that I have control over myself. It's when in 2018, you know, I tried to do dry 2018, so not drinking or taking drugs for the whole year, and I did 9 months straight. And that is when a switch turned in my mind, and I was like, you know what? Now I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Before, I didn't know if I could quit, but then it got to a point that I knew, okay, you know what? I've got this. Maybe it'll take a few more tries, but I have got this. And it only came from one thing. I didn't see a therapist. I didn't take any antidepressants. You know, in fact, what I was taking was even worse for me, right? The drugs and the alcohol. But ultimately, meditation instilled that belief, right? So this is, for you a real life case study, if you like. Okay, so all right. So what else are these symptoms, right? So we've looked at the ones that come from the medication. A big one, by the way, is diminished sexual interest. This, will not help your relationships, as I'm sure you know. And these antidepressants, they lose their effect over time because your body becomes more and more used to them. And the more used to them it becomes, the effect diminishes. You have to increase the dose, just like you do with cigarettes or cocaine, okay? So it brings about changes in your personality. And it's not just that, it's not just the side effects of taking the medications. It is the fact that when you try to get off them, oh my God, that is a whole other story altogether, right? So when you're trying to get off them, the kind of side effects of that are anxiety, dizziness, fatigue, blurred vision, feeling sad, feeling hopeless, feeling worthless. So ultimately, you may have taken this medication for about 6 months, but the moment you try to come off them, you're back to the same feelings you were feeling before, right? So what good have they done, if any, is the question. What good have they done, okay? And look, I don't want to sound like I'm berating taking these medicines, because in many cases they do work, okay? For my fiance as well, they did work. She was able to successfully taper off them. But, I know that it wasn't just tapering off the medication. There was a lot of spiritual practice that went into it. And that is where a lot of the power comes from. Maybe not all of it, but a lot of it, right? So what I'm suggesting here is that you take all the help you can get. Why rely on just a therapist or just medication? If there is something that we can do for ourselves that, in my humble opinion, is the most powerful thing that you can do, why not do it? why not do it, right? So let me now tell you a bit about meditation and what are the actual advantages. And for the skeptics out there, I'm going to give you some science, okay? And then we're going to go beyond science. And I'm going to tell you in a very simple, common sense way why meditation is so powerful, okay? So let's get to it, okay? I'm going to give you, what I want to start with is just give you 3 scientific reasons as to why meditation can help you overcome depression, okay? So the first one, and these are all to do with our brain, essentially, right? So the first one is to do with a part of our brain called the amygdala, which is the fear center in our brain, okay? In people who have depression, the amygdala is overactive, okay? And meditation has been proven in numerous studies, you can look this up online, to deactivate. It causes deactivation in the amygdala. It causes deactivation in the fear center of the brain, okay? So what is this fear center, right? This comes from, when we lived as cavemen. If there was a lion or a tiger that was about to attack you, your body needed to send signals to your brain that you are in danger and you need to, fight or flight, ultimately. And this is the center that kind of activates that, right? The fear center. But the problem is that as we have, gone through evolution and we live now in a concrete jungle where there is no real threat of a lion or a tiger, our bodies have not changed that way. It still activates the fear center whenever we face non-threatening stress, like the stress of paying a bill, paying a mortgage, or the stress of hitting a deadline, right? None of those are going to kill you, but yet your body responds in that way, and it is a highly, highly stressful situation for your system, and this is a big cause of depression because your body continuously just goes into that mode, and ultimately, you become depressed, right? So that's the first one. Meditation has been shown, numerous studies, to deactivate the amygdala, to deactivate the fear center in the mind, in the brain, okay? The second one is to do with the default mode network, or the DMN, okay? So like the name suggests, this is the part of your brain that is responsible for you on default, right? When you're not engaged in any activity, what are you doing? The mind begins to wander, okay? And this mind wandering, the nature of the mind, because of what is filled in our subconscious, is it goes into a negative thinking process, right? So you think about one thing, how am I going to pay the bill? And all of a sudden you start thinking about, becoming homeless, right? Because it takes you ruminate, you just go off on that chain of thought. So a study by Yale University showed that meditation decreases the activity in the DMN, okay, in the default mode network. It decreases the activity, which means that there is less rumination and you have more control over your thought process. You have more control over your thinking process. So if you find your brain going into off on a negative direction, you have the power to bring it back through meditation. And this is why it helps, okay? The third one is, I want to just read word for word a short paragraph from a study done by Princeton University, okay? And what it says is, of our approximately 86 billion brain cells, most are influenced by serotonin, known by many as the happy neurotransmitter. Serotonin is key to helping relay signals from one part of the brain to another. This crucial chemical has a profound impact on our mood, contributing greatly to our overall state of well-being. Now, according to Princeton brain researcher Barry Jacobs, a PhD, depression sets in when fewer and fewer new brain cells are created, with stress and age being the leading trigger. Thankfully, depression sufferers don't need to submit to a diminished quality of life. there is a highly effective, all-natural solution. University of Montreal scientists have shown that activities like meditation have a direct impact on the brain's production of serotonin levels. It is thought that meditation bathes neurons with an array of feel-good chemicals, effectively melting away the stress that leads to low serotonin levels and depression. In the end, meditation's serotonin replenishing effect works to create a utopian chemical environment for the production of new brain cells, making you a happier and healthier person. How beautiful is that, right? So the three scientific factors were, number one, it deactivates the fear center, the amygdala, meditation. Number two, it deactivates the default mode network, the DMN, which takes you on a tangent of negative thinking, okay? And the third one is increase in happiness chemicals in the brain, a study from Yale University, okay? So that is, for anyone that's a bit skeptical, look, science, over the past decade or so has been doing a lot of research into meditation, and it is proving that meditation is a great way to overcome stress, depression, anxiety. But I mean, it should be common sense. There should be no need for a study to prove this. It should be common sense. So what I want to do now is I want to go beyond science, okay, and into simplicity, into common sense, and just share with you a few really simple reasons which will really appeal to your common sense as to why meditation works, okay? Now, the first one I want to speak about is, actually, before speaking about that, let's define meditation. What is actually meditation, okay? So what we're speaking about here, firstly, it's good to know that the English language does not have a correct word for meditation, okay? So meditation is not actually something you do. We cannot do meditation. Meditation is a state, just like sleep, right? So you can't do sleep. You fall into sleep. So in the same way, you fall into the state of meditation, okay? So with sleep, if the right conditions are in place, comfortable bed, darkness, you being tired, you likely fall asleep, right? So what are the conditions for meditation? The conditions for meditation are very simple. Unbroken concentration on a single object. And this is why you probably heard of focusing on the breath, focusing on the mantra, focusing on a visualization, focusing on a sound, whatever it may be, okay? So what we speak of as meditation in today's day and age is actually practices in concentration, okay? So why are these so powerful? Okay, so I want to give you another 3 reasons as to why these are so powerful, okay? And once again, they're going to be really, really simple. So the first one is the contrast between a weak mind and a strong mind, okay? So a weak mind is a scattered mind, and a strong mind is a focused mind, okay? So think about it like this. The sun, which is shining at the moment, if it's daytime where you are, it's warm, right? Everyone on earth, feels warm or maybe a bit hot because of the rays of the sun, but no one's getting burned. Yet the sun has the ability to burn you, right? But, okay, so the rays are scattered and no one's getting burned. But if we take a magnifying glass and we convert the sun's rays through the magnifying glass, what's going to happen? Whatever's underneath will light up. It will be set on fire, okay? So that's the same with our mind. So when the sun's rays are scattered, they are weaker. That's why they don't burn. But when they are focused, converged onto one point, they become very strong and they can light up anything. In the same way with our mind, because we practice so much distraction every day, social media, emails, WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, so much, right? Coming at you all the time, coming at you. Your mind is trained in distraction. And a mind trained in distraction is a weak mind. So what do? through meditation, through the practices of concentration on a single object, we strengthen the mind. Every time it goes away, we bring it back. Every time it goes away, we bring it back, bring it back, bring it back. This means that your mind becomes very strong, and the moment you have a negative thought, you have now cultivated the strength of mind to not let it take you on a negative story, on a nightmare story. You have cultivated the strength to bring it back to what you want to focus on, whether it's your work, or whether it's something positive, or whether it's your meditation object. You have cultivated the strength, right? So now take this to the real world. Somebody who is depressed, if they cultivate the strength of mind, ultimately depression cannot exist in a strong mind. It cannot, because the mind is not controlling you. You are controlling the mind. You have become a master of your mind. Simple? Really simple, right? Number 2, so that was weak mind versus strong mind, okay? Number 2 is we're going to look at positive mind versus negative mind, okay? Positive versus negative. So, come on, really simple. In depression, the mind is very negative. It's full of negative thoughts, okay? And what we do in meditation is we want to focus on an object, and we have the freedom to focus on a positive object, okay? Like a mantra. Let's say you choose the mantra, I am love. I am love, okay? Now, if you look at the mind as a bowl or a glass of water, like this. So right now, this water is dark, okay? In your mind, in the negative mind, it's dark, muddy water because of the negative thinking, okay? So that's what's filling the glass. So what we want to do through meditation is we concentrate upon a positive mantra, like I am love, continuously. Every time you say it, you're dropping a droplet of positivity into this water, which is your mind. And there will come a time when there will be as much good as bad in your mind, and that is a place of neutrality, which is great. But as you continue, the water will become less muddy and more clear, because there will be more positive than negative, right? This is how somebody like me, who was a total, in addiction to drugs and alcohol, just through the practice of daily meditation, mantra meditation, I was able to essentially make my mind, balanced with both good and bad thoughts, and then continue to insert the mantra in my mind and have it take over, have the positivity take over, where the thoughts of drinking or doing drugs or any of that just became a memory. Now, does it happen immediately? Does it happen in an instant? No, it doesn't. It takes time. It does take time. But what is the point of being on depression medication, on antidepressants for 2 years, and then struggling to come off them? What good has that done, right? Why not practice meditation alongside that and, really speed up that recovery, okay? So the first one was weak mind versus strong mind. Then the second one was positive mind versus negative mind, okay? So you see how meditation will make your mind both strong and positive. They're two different things, two different contexts, but strong and positive, okay? And the third one, which is the ultimate point of meditation, is it takes you closer to your true nature, okay? So I'll just explain this to you. This is what I was saying before, where the science of yoga tells us that the cause of human suffering is the ignorance of our true nature. So what is our true nature, okay? So first of all, it's good to understand that, we are not this body or this mind, right? What's the difference between somebody that's dead and someone that's alive? The physical body is still there in the dead person. What is not there? The soul, the consciousness. Ultimately, the consciousness is not there, right? So that's what we are. When we say he's left his body or she's left her body, what is left, right? The pure consciousness, the awareness that gives life, that thing that gives life, okay? So it is energy. This thing that gives life is energy. And just like electric energy, if there's an open socket and you go and put your finger in an open socket, what's going to happen? You get a shock. You get an electric shock. So the nature of electrical energy is to shock you. In the same way, this energy that gives life, it also has a nature, and its nature is love. Its nature is pure love. So what we are made up of, us human beings, it is the same thing. We are made up of pure love, and that's what divinity is. Okay, this is what the science of yoga teaches. Now, what does this mean? This is why we seek happiness, because happiness is our true nature, right? That's why we seek it, because it's really what's within us. So what meditation does, in a very simple sentence, is that it takes out the weeds, the negative thoughts and the clutter from our mind. And when it clears that, we are able to see our true nature. We are able to experience and feel this love that is within us. And that is the exact opposite of depression. So on the one hand, the best version of yourself is full of love, fully knowing your true nature. And the other one that is so far away from this true nature is the one that is, in fear and anxiety and depression, right? So high vibration, low vibration, ultimately. So meditation takes you closer to your true nature, which is love, which means that it automatically takes you away from the lower nature, okay? The lower emotions like depression, which are the furthest from our true nature. So I hope that makes sense, okay? So in a nutshell, right, why is meditation good? The scientific reasons: it deactivates the fear center, it deactivates the DMN, which is where your mind goes on default, okay? And it increases the happiness chemicals in your brain. Beyond science and into simplicity, it strengthens your mind. So you go from a weak mind to a strong mind. Number two, it makes the mind focused, right? So from a scattered mind, you go to from a scattered mind, you go to a strong mind, right? Sorry, I made a mistake there. I made a mistake in my own analogy, okay? So let me tell you what that was again, okay? So it makes your mind strong as opposed to weak. It makes your mind positive as opposed to negative. And last but not least, it takes you closer to your true nature, which is pure love, and naturally away from depression and negativity, okay? So I hope this video ultimately will encourage you to meditate. This is the only reason I'm doing this. Please realize that I'm not gaining anything from you meditating, right? That's not why I'm promoting this. Like, I'm not asking you to believe in anything. This has got nothing to do with religion, okay? Nothing at all. I'm not asking you to buy anything from me. My meditations are put up for free on YouTube. You can go there and you can listen to them, and there's many varieties, and I will continue to add more and more, okay? So the main thing is that, having come out of, the addiction and the trauma of my parents passing away, having seen my fiance's journey, and what it really took for her to come out, what it really took, the element of spiritual practice that it took, I felt like I need to do this video for anyone that is either going through depression or knows somebody that is, and wants to figure a way out, ultimately. So that is it. That is my 2 cents on this topic. I really hope this helps. And for free meditations and videos similar to this, check out the YouTube channel. There's tons of content on there. And that is it. Thank you for listening. I know it's been a really long video. I hope you didn't get bored. But thank you for listening. Thank you. Namaste.